Hi, I'm Randall. You might know me as...
Randy, where are you? Randy.
Yeah. Hang out with Captain Q long enough, and you'll end up buying a boat. And I'm no exception. So join me as I navigate the ups and downs of owning an old sailboat. Okay, so the big splash-in day. It was a beautiful day, kind of like today. Gorgeous temps, blue skies. I couldn't have been more excited to get the boat underway and see how he performed under sail. So waiting for Captain Q at the dock was kind of unusual. He is early all of the time. That day, he was actually late, and he had a very good reason, which is he wanted to buy some ice to put in the ice box to cool our bubbles for the celebration of the first voyage. The tide was going out and we were in a fairly shallow river, and I had been warned by the nice people at the Yankee Marina that you really want to get out of the dock at peak high tide because there's some really narrow parts to the channel. The channel runs through the Royal River and then out the mouth to Casco Bay. We left the dock, we got underway, my nephew and his girlfriend joined us, and I managed to pilot the boat into a really snug spot to refuel and top off the diesel tanks. So we did that. It was about, I don't know, maybe like $100 in diesel, so it wasn't too bad. We did buy some ice that Captain Q wasn't able to find, so we had that on hand, and then we headed out. I put Captain Q at the wheel. I figured I would fly the drone. If you haven't seen the Royal River, it's a gorgeous part of southern Maine, so I was just enjoying the drone shots that I was going to get, and we got around the first few markers and flying the drone, and I got the shots that I wanted. The boat was shiny, perfect sunny day, so it was just gorgeous. And then went to land the drone, and that's where things started to take a turn for the worse. My nephew went to grab it for me. It caught a little puff of wind and went right behind me. And unfortunately, what was behind me was the shroud for the mizzen. So it caught that, clipped it, and then slid down the length of the shroud. It was like... I need to grab that thing. And we were kind of debating jumping in and trying to grab it. You know, the likelihood of grabbing it while it's sinking was pretty slim. So with all that distraction, about 30 seconds later, the boat touched bottom. And we were on the starboard side of the channel, and we were too close to the edge and touched bottom. So Captain Q revved up the engine, and we kind of wiggled and ground our way forward with full power, probably 2,200, 2,500 RPM on the engine. Kind of wiggled our way free and tried to make our way back into the channel, and then made it, I think, one more turn around the next buoy, and then through some confusion and some conversation, we ran aground a second time. And that time, the boat really came to a halt. I will be candid in that Captain Q and I had slightly different opinions about how to break free from a grounding. So in my experience, what you really want to do is get weight outboard of the boat. I want to tilt the hull sideways to make that keel as short as possible and then back it out. Because the way you came in was obviously deep enough for you. You don't really know what's in front of you as far as depth. You do that by getting bodies to, one side, or my favorite way has been to swing the boom out and then hang off the boom. That's worked for me one other time when I touched bottom on a really sandy bottom. So I had two bodies out of the boom, gets that weight canted so that the hull is heeling a bit, and then you can back out. Captain Q, on the other hand, wanted to put up all the sails and kind of power through. He's had success doing that in the Abacos, in a full keel boat. I think where we were was more of a ledge because that particular part of the river had been dredged, so you have a bit of a shelf. So once you run aground, you really just want to back up and get back into the main center of the channel. Some really friendly powerboaters came by, grabbed our main halyard. The halyard is a great place to grab the boat to lean it over. So you grab the top halyard, you give it to them, they tie it off, and then they try to power you over. We tried that two different boats with two different levels of power. We could not break free and back out that way. And then I gave a call to Yankee Marina, who I knew had a pretty powerful boat. Our friend Adam came out, and we hooked up the halyard to their power boat. We got the boat heeled over, but there was just no budging. So at that point, my nephew and his girlfriend had a wedding event to get to, so they jumped on the powerboat and said, "See you later." And Captain Q and I were then going to be left to our own devices. So now we are aground. It's about 2 in the afternoon, let's say, maybe 2:30. The tide is going out still, so it's less and less water. We ran aground in about 3.5 feet of water. The boat draws 4 foot 10. So we're getting less and less water, and the boat's starting to heel and heel and heel. And as it's doing that, I measured it. We got to a maximum heel angle of 31.2 or something. If you haven't been on a boat that's heeling 31 degrees, it is really difficult to move at all. I mean, you're doing a lot of kind of pull-up action. So I started to notice in the navigation station a little bit of water. And when I say a little bit, it was actually bubbling up through the floorboards. And my immediate thought was, oh, we've heeled over and now one of the through holes is jammed up with mud and silt and we're not taking on water. One of those through holes is opened up and is gushing. So I went into full panic mode. I even turned on a GoPro and was so discombobulated. You'll see the footage here. I didn't even know if the display was working. I just assumed it was all working, and it's almost nonsensical. I seem basically like I'm in complete panic mode. Captain Q was up in the cockpit. He was fairly fixated because of the heel angle. He wasn't able to maneuver around, so I'd have to kind of run back and touch base and let him know what's going on. But as I was in full panic mode, I was hand pumping water out of the bilge at the nav station, and it kept coming up and kept coming up, and I was freaked out. So he had probably the best clever advice that I had heard, which also confused me. He said, "What does it taste like?" So I said, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, grab a handful and take a little taste of the water that's in the nav station." So I did that, and he said, "Is it salty or not?" And it wasn't. It was just fresh water. And so that tells us the water is not coming in from the outside. The water is coming from the interior water tanks. So I have two water tanks, 125 gallons each, that were totally topped off, and now we're at a 31-degree heel angle. So obviously there's some kind of valve or opening that is allowing water to come out of those. So the next step was then to run the faucets with pressure water and get as much water out of those tanks as possible so that it's not just dumping into the bilge. So I did a lot of hand pumping, and I ran all the faucets simultaneously with the pumps going. And I think that dumps about 2 gallons a minute or so. So it still takes a good 30 minutes to dump 60 gallons. So for that hour, I was hand pumping and making sure that the water was going where I needed to go. What we were doing is waiting for the tide to come back in to then lift the boat back up, get us up off this silty clay sand. It's kind of a clam flat surface, so there's a little bit of muck, a little bit of sand, a little bit of silt, a lot of clam shells in the surface, but thankfully no rock or anything like that to worry about. So fast forward about 6 hours. Now I think it's close to 7 o'clock at night, and we started to correct back to our normal level heel angle. And a little bit after that, we were able to kind of break free. We started the engines up, and then I think, yeah, right around 7:30, we broke free, and it was quite a relief. I will say we had another crew of powerboaters that came by with a sympathetic six-pack, which really helped pass those 6 hours, just to have a couple beers and be able to maybe laugh at ourselves a little bit in the cockpit. So very humbling experience for that part. So if you think it ends there, it doesn't. The next part was pretty glorious. We broke free, we're under motor, we have the sails up, we're honking along at 8.5, 9 knots, which is pretty great for an old heavy gal like this. So we were motor sailing, but it was really nice to know that it was a quick boat and we didn't have too much crud on the bottom, like big chunks of clay that might be stuck there. If that were the case, we'd probably be doing like 4 or 5 knots. It took us about an hour and a half to get down to Portland, maybe a little bit longer, and we caught the most glorious kind of moonrise and sunset at the same time. So the day had a little bit of everything. Loss of a drone, running around twice, taking on water, panicking, being a first-time owner, just freaking out, and then all of a sudden this moment of beauty that was hard to ignore. It was just really pleasant to be out there. The temperature was beautiful. We got to my destination, which was in Portland, and it's actually kind of on the edge. If any of you are familiar with Portland, it was near the Eastern Prom, and it's a pretty busy waterway, so there is lots and lots of ferry traffic, and the anchorage itself has a lot of motion to it. We got the boat all buttoned up and put away, and everything was shut down. And we had my little Dyer dinghy, which we brought. And so the captain and I had a little debate as to who was going to get rowing responsibility. Captain insisted that he was going to be the stronger rower. We'll see about that. So he went to jump in the dinghy first, and unfortunately, it was really dark, and the dinghy was moving quite a bit and slipped, and the boat slid as he stepped. And I managed to grab the bow line and yank it to try to get it under him so he wouldn't go in the water. But in that process, he kicked up a leg, and that leg hit the seat, the midship seat of the dinghy. And I have heard Captain Q sing, but not quite like that. The hurting's on me, yeah. More of a howl, maybe. So he sucked it up, said he hurt his shin. Let's just get to shore. But when we got to the shore, we realized Captain Q's red pants were actually a much deeper red than the normal faded pink. It was a pretty bloody scene. So we decided to take him to the ER and get him stitched up. And you can see here, he was quite the trooper to walk in under his own power and managed to get 17 stitches in his leg. So that was how the day ended. What started as a fun little jaunt that was going to be a 2-hour sail motor cruise celebration turned into lost drone, running aground twice, and then Captain Q ends up with 17 stitches in his leg as the price to pay. So I don't know if anyone else has as humbling of a story on their splashing day, but if you have, drop a comment below, because misery loves company. So thankfully it's gone better since then. We haven't shed a whole lot of blood on the boat, so fingers crossed on that one. So thanks to Captain Q for the support and for the sacrifice. You don't have to ride in that dinghy anymore. So a couple of lessons learned from this experience. One is, if you're in a river and you're going on a river that has a relatively shallow draft, keep an eye on the tides and don't think you can beat the system. Just pay attention. When you're landing the drone on your boat, you probably want to bring it in aft, because if you make a mistake, you can just pull it back away from the boat. If you try to land it midship, there's a lot of shrouds and sheets and cables around. If you try to land it up near the bow, that's no good either. So best approach is coming in from the stern side. So your bailout position is just straight up and back. The next is, when you're taking on water, taste it. Assuming it's not toxic or Dayglow green and it has antifreeze in it, that was a really great tip. Test your water, taste your water. I've actually done that since and tasted it, and it was salt water. So that's a story for another time. When you're getting into the dinghy, make sure that you have a pretty calm state of sea. If you're not good at surfing and you don't have those balance faculties as nimble as you'd like, because a little bit of variation can make a big difference. So, even just hitting your shin can be pretty catastrophic. So, it could have been much worse if Captain Q had fallen in the water, and the water was, I think, 57 degrees, and he's got his Irish sweater on. That's a quick, unfun swim. So those are the quick ones learned. Also, if you lose a drone, you can replace just the drone body. So that's what I did. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, because that's where some of your support funds went, was to replace that drone body, which has been in service ever since, and has even taken a few clips of a pine tree. Next up, we're going to sit down with our friends from Edson Marine, who are going to help me do an evaluation of the steering system and all the elements that are involved. So for those of you that have watched some of the other episodes, we had a Hallberg Rassi where we took a look at the steering system a little bit more up close, and we're going to do something a little bit more in depth with my boat just to check it out. I think it's really important for boat owners or those who are looking at old boats to check out the steering system. So hopefully you'll come out of that with an understanding of how you can kind of DIY a quick evaluation. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining along.